After the grand wedding that silenced gossips and softened even the most skeptical hearts in the kingdom, Prince Darien and Lady Seraphina began their reign, not just as husband and wife, but as rulers whose union was forged through transformation, trust, and unexpected love. Darien, once a guarded and stoic prince, had learned to open his heart. Seraphina had not only won his affection, but had quietly taught him the strength in vulnerability. She, wise and kind with sharp political mind, became the queen the people never knew they needed. Their court was reformed within months. Seraphina introduced a council of voices previously unheard: women scholars, merchant leaders, and even a few commoners with deep insight into village life. Darien, now more open-minded, not only allowed but encouraged these changes. "Rule with your ears, not just your sword," she had told him once. He never forgot it. Under their joint reign, the kingdom of Elmora flourished. Crops were better managed through new farming methods introduced by Seraphina's advisors. Trade routes expanded as Darien opened dialogues with former rivals, his pride softened by her calm persuasion. He had once believed diplomacy was weakness. Now he saw it as the sharpest blade. But their reign was not without its trials. A rebellion brewed in the northern provinces, led by nobles who still believed women should not sit beside kings. Seraphina addressed them directly, not with swords, but with laws that exposed their corruption and greed. Darien stood beside her in the great hall as she spoke with clarity and fire, and the people cheered louder for her than they ever had for him. He didn't mind. In fact, he smiled. In the years that followed, stories were told of how the cold-hearted prince who trusted no woman became the beloved king who trusted only one, and she, in turn, gave him a legacy that outlived both their names. They had children, 3. One with Seraphina's quick wit, another with Darien's fierce loyalty, and the youngest with the curiosity of both. The people often said that the children would one day rule a golden age, but many believe it had already begun, with Darien and Seraphina, king and queen, heart and mind, ruling side by side, though peace had settled over Velmora like dawn's gentle light. Ruling a kingdom was never without shadows. Darien and Seraphina knew this. They had tasted personal transformation, but now they were guardians of something far greater, the soul of a nation, the plague of Winterfall. In the 4th year of their reign, a terrible illness crept through the valleys during a harsh winter. The disease, later called the Frost Veil, stole breath and warmth from hundreds before its name was even known. Panic stirred in the streets. Healers were overwhelmed, and the nobility whispered of fleeing to safer lands. But Seraphina refused to retreat. She and Darien turned the palace into a center of coordination. She organized healers into networks, summoned herbalists from distant lands, and transformed abandoned estates into convalescence homes. Darien rode out himself to oversee distribution of supplies, cutting through frozen terrain, earning him the people's awe not for his sword but his presence. When the plague waned in the spring, it was not by magic nor miracle, but by leadership, swift action, and unwavering compassion. The people began calling Seraphina the Heart of Elmora, and Darien, once feared as a distant and cold prince, became known as the King of the People. Their bond, tested by fire and frost, grew stronger. Ruling together, they brought balance. Seraphina's vision met Darien's action, and Darien's strength was softened by Seraphina's wisdom. Their eldest daughter, Princess Alira, had Seraphina's keen intellect and a tongue sharp as a blade. At 14, she was already sitting in council meetings, challenging older nobles with questions that exposed their pride. Seraphina often smiled quietly from her throne as Alira spoke. The girl was already more than reflection. She was an evolution. Prince Kaelin, the second-born, bore Darien's fierce loyalty and protective heart. He trained with the royal guard, but preferred diplomacy over duels. "A kingdom cannot be defended by sword alone," he often said, echoing lessons from both his parents. And little Lyric, the youngest, was a mystery still. He spent hours in the royal libraries and the palace gardens, sketching maps of places he'd only heard in stories. He spoke rarely, but when he did, even the wind seemed to hush to listen. The royal children were not kept behind silken veils. Seraphina made sure of it. They visited villages, tended to the sick, listened to merchants, and heard the concerns of farmers. Darien, too, believed in shaping heirs with earth under their boots, not gold under their feet. As the years passed, Velmora transformed. The once divided regions were now joined by newly paved roads, shared trade, and interwoven festivals that celebrated diversity rather than division. Women held more seats on the council than ever before. A great university was founded by Seraphina, and its grand tower bore her name, not as queen, but as founder and flame of knowledge. Darian oversaw the rebuilding of old fortresses, not as weapons of war, but as havens for travelers, scholars, and artists. Peace didn't make him soft. It made him sharper, more deliberate, more invested in the endurance of all he and Seraphina had built. And yet, they knew their time would one day pass. One evening, atop the palace balcony, with stars spilled across the sky, Seraphina looked over the city lit with lanterns and murmured to Darian, "Do you remember how you once said you would never trust a woman?" Darian chuckled, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "And now I trust one more than I trust myself." She leaned against him, her voice steady. "Then you become the king I always believed you could be." Together, they watched their kingdom breathe, thrive, and glow, a living testament to love earned, power shared, and a future shaped by both heart and hand.